So here at Anime Hype, we're here with Jonathan Klein. He is a huge ADR director, owns his own company that helps dubbing and bringing over shows overseas, if I'm correct.
Yes, both anime and video games. More emphasis on video games these years than anime, but I do that.
Yeah, I noticed you did a lot of work, especially with Capcom and Square Enix in particular, with Street Fighter 4 and then we got all the different Final Fantasies you worked on.
Yeah, I've worked on several Final Fantasy titles, Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy Crystal Bearers, and Final Fantasy Chocobo's Dungeon.
Nice. So between the two different types of work that you do, between video games and anime, which one do you get the most enjoyment out of?
Oh, I love everything. I love directing. Directing is just a lot of fun. I also enjoy being a producer too when I can't be a director. But as a director, you know, it's a lot more one-on-one with the actors. That's the best part of it, is basically trying to shape and create a performance with an actor to create something that the fans will enjoy when they play the game or they watch the anime.
So that comes to another point I want to talk about, specifically about video games. When they're in the middle of development, do you guys also get part of the game early to try and start translating it a little bit early and directing it? Or is that something you have to wait until the full Japanese release is out and then you guys start working on it?
Many years ago, that's the way it used to be. Like, I remember some of my earlier titles, the game would come out in Japan and then 6 months to a year later, the US release would come out fully localized. Now, it's more simultaneous release. Street Fighter V, which I directed, is because we finished it. That's going to be a simultaneous release, and the Japanese did record their audio first. You know, a lot of the actual graphics and animation was nowhere near done, and we were getting the scripts just as soon as they finished the scripts in Japan. So, like, the materials were coming to us very quickly, and so we would work on them as they would come to us. And so that's why you'll get a simultaneous release product next year.
Sweet. Do you mind if I talk about Street Fighter V a little bit? Like, what's out already? Like,
I can. Well, let me put a disclaimer by saying, one, I'm not an employee of Capcom. Therefore, I cannot speak for Capcom. I can only speak for myself and my experiences, and some of the things that I may say may not actually represent Capcom or their parties, and I also may not be allowed to say it. So I can only just tell you what I know and what I'm allowed to say.
No, that's fine. One of my questions was for the English voice cast of the characters I already know, particularly like Ken, Ryu, Chun-Li. This is the same voice cast from Street Fighter 4, or is it a whole new cast?
Can't say. Not allowed to.
How did it feel to get work on Street Fighter 5 before it was announced?
When we were told that we were working on Street Fighter 5, we were very excited about the whole thing. Of course, you know, there's a lot of secrecy when it comes to working for Capcom. We had that with Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we were, you know, made aware of the product before it was announced, and we had to sign a huge stack of paperwork to swear on our lives and our future children that if we said anything, our souls would be damned to hell forever, basically. And then when we had actors audition, it was the same thing. We had to have them sign papers that said, whether or not you get a job on this project, you can't talk about this. And the thing was, we really didn't want them to know what they were auditioning for. But we couldn't change the scripts too much to make them not know, if we were auditioning for, you know, Ryu or Ken or something like that, we couldn't sort of like just put things like, I mean, we had to put a Hadouken in there just so we know how they would sound like saying Hadouken. And if we didn't put that in there, it would be kind of, you know, the character, we could say like, hey there, or something like that. That doesn't work. So but in some actors were like, oh my God, am I reading for Street Fighter 4? I'm like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And you never heard that, and if you say anything else, I'm going to kill you. And it was, we had to put a lot of fear of God into people. And fortunately, when Street Fighter 4 was announced, it was done through Capcom, and everything was great with that. So yeah, there's a lot of secrecy with the elements that go into it, and but we're always excited, and of course we want to. When we get a job, we're like, yeah, well, we're working on this. And like, we can't. I mean, but that's true for anybody who works in this business. If you do that, basically, your career is mud, and you can't work on any other projects.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine how hard it's trying to keep something in because everyone's going nuts trying to figure out, like, what's the next character announcement? When's it coming out? Like, when's the next beta so I can play that guy?
Well, I'm sure it'll be soon.
Yeah, I'm
and but again, those are not controlled by me. Those are controlled by Capcom.
And Ono?
Ono-san is he has a plan for everything. He's very smart, and he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to get the fans excited about what's coming out next. So.
Oh yeah, his little teaser images with like a mini Blanca is the best way he does it. So, are you working on any upcoming SquareSoft projects that you might be able to mention?
No, not this time.
Okay.
I mean, not that I can't mention. I'm not working on any SquareSoft projects at this time.
Now, there is a question I want to ask you about when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 first came out, and then they released Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like 8 months later.
Right.
How did it feel when you approached that situation when you're like, wow, they're releasing the next version way early?
It was kind of interesting because we were told that, there was going to be more characters available later on. But the way things worked, we had to bring back in all the original actors because now there was interactions with all the new characters. So, so it was like we couldn't just say, oh, okay, we'll just forget about the old actors and work with like the new ones. But I guess from my perspective, I would say they felt good about the product, that they were looking forward to just keep on going with it. And I don't know the details of why they went with like a completely rather than a downloadable than a fully expanded release. I've heard rumors, and again, these are unsubstantiated, so I wouldn't know. Some people said the development company didn't have enough time to prepare a expandable version of it, so they had to do separate releases basically. But as I remember, they made the second version cheaper than the first.
They did. They made it $40 instead of $60, which was a nice change.
So that you didn't have to feel like you were getting burned for buying another game, basically.
Yeah.
But with the Street Fighter series, it's been great. From Super all the way through Ultra, you've only had to pay like $15 for an expansion download on there, and for so much expandability and everything that comes with it. I think it's great.
So have you been working with Street Fighter 4 all the way through Ultra as well?
Yeah, we did. I was the producer on all those. Talis and Jaffe, who hopefully you'll interview sometime during this convention, was the voice director on those projects. Did a wonderful job.
Nice. What would you say is the one favorite game that you've worked on, honestly, or anime, in your experience that you've had the most fun directing?
Well, it's like saying, again, what's your favorite child? Yeah. If but I mean, all of them have been great. There have been different experiences. Some have been a lot more intense. Some have been so much fun, just casual kind of thing, because it's like, oh, we're it's a lot of people coming back and doing something that we've done before, and we can sort of just have fun while we're in the booth. If I were to put like a finger on something and say, well, what was fun? Well, I mean, I like what was challenging. I would say I liked directing. There was an anime called Paranoia Agent that was created by Satoshi Kon.
Yep.
It was his only television series he ever did. Before he passed away, and I did the voice direction on that. That was like back in 2004, 2005, I believe. And I really enjoyed that series just because it was so intelligent, so adult in terms of, the storyline, and the fact that it was sort of, well, he called it a relay race, where you would pass the baton over to the next person, and then the story changed because it focused on a different character as opposed to the character that was in the story before. But the character that was in the story before would appear in latter episodes as well as part of the overall arching story that was there. And I really enjoyed it because it's like I got to direct different stories within the overall story, and I got to work with an amazing cast of actors on that. And, each one got their moment to shine and focus on things, and that was a lot of fun. Video games, all of them have been fun. I'll say that working on Street Fighter V has been quite a challenge, but very rewarding. I've worked with a great group of people from both Capcom USA and Capcom Japan. Very helpful, very supportive people, and it was just a lot of fun, a lot of exciting things in the game. Soon to be announced, I'm sure. Not by me.
Yeah.
I'm keeping my mouth shut, Capcom, please. Don't hurt me.
So, speaking of revisiting old series and stuff like that, was it fun to revisit Hellsing Ultimate after you'd done Hellsing? Like, pretty much get all the same cast back together for a much darker, violent version of Hellsing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate are well, I'm sort of like the grandfather. I would say Taliesin is the father. He voice directed both series. I'm like the grandfather who sort of is proud of his children, basically, and grandchildren of the anime itself. It's kind of but it was fun because once they had told us we were going to do it for Ultimate, that is. We started Ultimate back in 2005. That's 10 years ago. That was the first episode was coming out then, and we had finished Hellsing around 2001, so it was 4 years later, and then we so we were calling everybody and saying, okay, we're getting the band back together again. So 3-4 years later, not so bad to like people were excited. And then we did like the first 4 episodes, and they were about 6 months apart, maybe a year apart.
Yeah. And
then we had the Geneon closing their doors, and the episodes were in limbo. We didn't know what to do, and Funimation contacted us. I think it was like 2010 or so. No, it was even later. It's probably 2011 or so, and said, "Oh, we've got the rights to episodes 5 through 8. We want you to continue." And it was like, now we're talking 5 years later, we're saying, okay guys, we're bringing the band back together. And the funny thing was, some of them are like gone. Not only were they not in LA, they were like they were like way off in other areas. And it was like, we have to okay, let's arrange for them to fly back and do this work for us and stuff like that. So, it was quite challenging but fun, and it was great also just to be able to see them and work with them again. But I think what was great also is as soon as they all came back and getting them in the booth again and just see them fall into character was just amazing. It was a lot of fun.
Very nice. Well, I mean, we don't have much time left, Chris. So there is one thing I do want to also ask you. When the anime bubble burst, which was around 2005 when Geneon closed.
Geneon closed 2007.
2005
2005 was actually a great year for anime. We were doing like 8 or 9 series simultaneously at one point. 2005, 2006. It was just from the time we started 2000, really dubbing anime to like 2007. About 2006 was really, really good, and then it would start tapering off. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, no, I was just gonna ask, how do you feel about how the anime industry is now? Like when it was at its bleakest moment, like five years ago, there was just that dark time when you really saw nothing, and like Best Buy was like shrinking their shelves down to like one rack, and Suncoast closed.
The whole. Well, I would say there was 2 things. I mean, it was both. It was bad and it was good. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. In terms of the best of times, I think what the crash did was shake up the industry enough to tell both the Japanese and the U.S. distribution, one, prices can't be this ridiculous for material. You can't be like inciting bidding wars between different companies just to try to get the most money for it, or setting unrealistic sales goals for your title, thinking that your show is going to be the next greatest thing, the next Pokemon, the next whatever it was at that time that had been a hit or an unexpected hit. But and it also helped control the saturation of the market.
Yeah.
Because that was the problem. It was also it was just oversaturated. when I first started working in anime, there may have been like 2 to 4 releases in a month. Then it became, maybe 2 to 4 releases in a week, and then soon it became like 8 to 12 releases in a week. The problem was that the market was getting bigger, and the customers were not increasing as exponentially as the amount of titles were, and everybody was fighting over the same amount of dollars that could be spent, and that's when people started turning to the internet, basically. But it was also the worst of times because suddenly we went from doing 8 shows simultaneously to like doing nothing. It was it hit us hard at first, but we sort of saw the writing on the wall through some things that had happened earlier on before like officially Geneon announced their doors. So we started focusing more on video games as a result of that. So when the crash hit, we weren't as significantly affected as probably a lot of other companies that were more deeply entrenched in anime and were like, doing projects hand over fist. So that was a little bit different. There still was a bit of there was a lot of leanness in that sort of 2008 through 2010 region. But that for us, after I think everybody started recovering, the smoke cleared and you had the companies that survived, I think both the Japanese side and the U.S. side sort of said, look, let's work together a lot more closely. Let's not, set unrealistic expectations for things. Let's try to work, let's either, produce products that the fan want to see, understand the market that the U.S. has. Let's also bring a lot more simultaneous releases in terms of, we'll do a digital streaming subtitle version and things like that, which was to help counter this whole demand for I want my anime now. And I think those are good things that have really helped the industry. Now, of course, there's always, everything can be improved, but I think, as I said, it was probably, while it was an unfortunate thing, it was probably for the better that that it happened, because it was going to happen eventually if they had just let the market become this big bloated monster that it was back in 2007, 2006.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And